Chapter 0 Echoes Beneath the Ash. When the tree burns, all 9 realms tremble. There was once a tree so vast that its roots curled beneath the realms of the dead, and its crown reached into the sky where the gods made their home. Yggdrasil, the world tree, the spine of the cosmos. Its bark whispered with the breath of time. Its branches held stars, and beneath it, the 9 realms slept, turning quietly in the twilight of gods. There was Asgard, home of the Aesir, where Odin sat upon his high throne, one eye closed to see more than 2 ever could. Midgard, the realm of men, cradled in mortality, humming with the crackling warmth of fire and song. Vanaheim, where softer gods once reigned over fruit and forest. Alfheim, a shining place, home to elves that flickered like light through leaves. Jotunheim, the wild land of giants, raw and cold, thunder echoing across stone. Svartalfheim, deep and dark, where the dwarves toiled over gold and secrets. Niflheim, cold and wet with fog, where frost clung to silence. Muspelheim, burning with eternal flame, where the fire giant Surtur waited, sword in hand. And Helheim, realm of the dead, colder than any winter, stiller than any grave. All were held together by the roots and branches of Yggdrasil. All pulsed with its ancient rhythm. All were destined to fall. But the end was never loud. It was quiet. It began with a silence so deep that even Heimdall, the watchful god of Jallarhorn, dared not break it. The ravens of Odin stopped circling. The Norns, the weavers of fate, paused at the well of Njord. Even Loki, ever the restless one, grew still in his chains. The signs were subtle, like rot beneath bark. Not a storm, but the stillness before one. Not a scream, but the breath held just before. Fimbulwinter had begun. 3 winters, no sun, no spring, no bird song nor laughter, just snow falling on snow, until even memory seemed to freeze. Long before the final wolf swallowed the sun, the roots of Yggdrasil had already begun to rot. And so begins the tale. Not of the end, but of the echo after. Chapter I, Fimbulwinter, the 3 long winters. There are winters, and then there is Fimbulwinter. It came not with thunder, nor warning, but with a quiet that smothered sound. The sun did not rise. The snow did not melt. And what began as frost on rooftops became ice in the veins of the world. First winter. At first, the people of Midgard lit more fires. They told themselves it was just a long season, that spring would be late, but it would come. It always came. They whispered warmth into their homes with stories of the gods, of Thor riding his chariot, of Sif braiding golden harvests into her hair. But the stories grew shorter, the woodpile grew smaller. The rivers stilled beneath white skin. Birds that once sang at dawn grew silent. Even wolves howled less. Only the wind spoke, and it did so with teeth. In a cabin nestled within a pine forest, an old woman named Eldred sat on a fur-wrapped bench. Children curled at her feet like pups. Her fingers, gnarled from age and work, traced patterns in the frost on the window. There was a time, she whispered, when the air smelled of grass and salt, when the snow only stayed a while, like a guest who knew not to linger. The children listened, but none of them remembered warmth, not truly. They had heard of spring, but they had never lived it. Second winter. By the second winter, the stories had changed. No longer were they of gods and harvest. They were of survival, of men who killed 4 loaves of rye, of families who wandered into the woods. Eldred's fire burned low. The children had grown leaner. Their father, once a hunter, no longer returned with rabbits in his sack. One night, silence as the wind howled like a creature outside. The youngest child, Einar, asked, "Will the sun come back, Grandma?" Eldred closed her eyes. "Perhaps, but even if it does, we must remember how to live without it." She handed him a strip of dried meat, the last. No one spoke of that truth aloud. That night, they huddled together and dreamed of apples. They had never tasted apples. Third winter. The third winter had no dreams. Fires gave out. Trees snapped under their own weight. The wolves, too thin to fear man, crept closer. Brothers fought over stale bread. Villages once bound by kinship became fortresses of suspicion. Even the gods seemed distant. Temples to Thor and Freyr were abandoned. The idols grew cold and cracked. Offerings froze before they could rot. And still, no sun. Eldred's family was no longer a family. Only Einar remained, barely. He did not speak much anymore. He listened to the wind. He watched the stars when they showed. Sometimes, he thought he saw them blink like perched on the roof. It stared at him for a long time. Einar did not shoo it away. He whispered, "Tell him we remember." The raven tilted its head and flew. The stillness. It was not the cold that ended Midgard's memory. It was the silence. No birds, no laughter, no gods, just the low hum of frosts biting deeper each day. Even the great tree, Yggdrasil, once humming with sap and song, stood still. Branches bare, roots curling inwards, no longer like fingers holding something broken. Had frozen. Even fate had paused. Fimbulwinter was never just snow. It was a forgetting. A quiet so complete that the world itself seemed unsure if it had ever been alive. It snowed not just outside, but inside the hearts of men. But deep in the forest, beyond the breath of men and gods, something stirred. A tremble, a sound, like chains straining, or perhaps the first creak of a door long shut. It would not be long now, for even endless winter ends, but not with warmth, with a howl. Chapter 2. The howl that broke the sky. There are beasts born to roam, and then there are beasts born to wait. Beneath the iron canopy of a forgotten forest, black trees choked with frost and moss, a great shadow slumbered, Fenrir, son of Loki, born of giantess and god, shaped not by nature, but by prophecy. He had been beautiful once, a cub with silver eyes and a coat dark as midnight. The gods admired him, but as he grew, so too did the whispered falling leaves in Asgard's golden gardens. He would be the one to end Odin. He would devour the sky. He would shatter the order of the realms. And so the gods did what gods often do. They feared what they could not control. They tricked him. They called it a game. Tyr, the only one brave enough to love the wolf, placed his hand into the beast's mouth, a token of trust, as the others wound a ribbon of impossible thread around Fenrir's limbs, stronger than steel, forged from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, the spit of a bird, and the dreams of a dying god. When Fenrir could no longer move, he knew. He bit down. Tyr did not scream. He had promised no pain. And so, bound in a cave far from gods or moonlight, Fenrir waited. The breaking. The world above froze. The fires died, but below where no light reached, Gleipnir strained. With every heartbeat of the dying world, a thread frayed. With every death in Midgard, another bond weakened. And then it snapped. Not with thunder, not with fire, but with a howl so ancient, so deep, it didn't echo through the forest, it bent the trees. Birds fell from the sky, lakes rippled, though the air was still. And far above, in Asgard, Odin looked to the horizon and whispered, "It has begun." Fenrir stood, no longer a pup, no longer bound. His eyes burned like dying stars. He leaped from the forest with hunger, but not for food. For fate. For freedom. For finality. Tears lament. From a distant cliff, a solitary figure stood against the wind. Tear. One hand, one oath broken. He had watched the wolf grow. He had held his head in his lap when Fenrir cried for his father. He had fed him by hand when others trembled. Now, he watched his old friend bring dusk to the gods. And still, he could not raise a sword. Tyr's breath caught on the cold. His voice broke. He was not born evil. His fingers curled around the phantom of his missing hand. Only born to end what should have ended long ago. Swallowing the moon. High above, Mahoney, the god of the moon, fled across the sky. For centuries, he had danced across the firmament, chased by Fenrir's son. The great wolf bounded across mountaintops, jaws wide, with a leap that split the heavens. He snapped. The moon vanished. The stars blinked once, then faded. Darkness fell thick and total. Somewhere, a mother in Midgard screamed, clutching her children. Somewhere, the tides stilled. Somewhere, Thor clenched his hammer and knew his hour neared. Fenrir, standing atop the highest peak, lifted his snout to the sky and howled again. Not in rage, not in glee. This was not rebellion, but in inevitability. This was prophecy unfolding. And the air grew heavy. The earth trembled. The oceans began to boil. Something beneath the waves stirred. And so, the next chapter awakened. The sky cracked, not from thunder, but from the breath of a god-eating wolf. Chapter 3. Jörmungandr. And beneath the waves, the serpent dreamed of thunder. In the black deep of Midgard's sea, where even light drowns, something moved. Not fast, not furious, but inevitable. The water did not boil, it quivered, as if afraid. Fish fled. Whales turned and vanished into colder currents. Even kraken swam away from the center of the tremor. There, coiled tighter than the roots of mountains, rested the world serpent. Jörmungandr, spawn of Loki, brother to Fenrir and Hel. Bigger than the ocean, longer than the horizon. Tail and mouth, a circle that kept the world whole. He had been still for centuries. His breathing matched the tides. His dreams were heavy with venom and fate. And now, at the end of all things, he opened one golden eye. The curse of prophecy. The gods knew Jörmungandr would rise at Ragnarök. They had always known. Odin had seen it in the well of Yrd. Thor had felt it in his bones. every time he lifted his hammer. And yet, there had been a time, long ago, when the serpent and the thunder god met in secret, not as enemies, but as test and tether. The fisherman's tale. Once, Thor had disguised himself, a mortal fisherman at sea with Hymir, an old and superstitious man. They cast a line baited with an ox's head. The sea fell quiet. Then a pull. Not like a fish, not even like a whale. A tug so strong it bent reality. Thor stood, his disguise slipping, arms straining, blood running from his hands. The rod cracked, the sea frothed, and there, rising like a mountain from the abyss, was Jörmungandr, coils the size of cliffs, eyes like suns behind smoke. The two locked eyes, not in rage, but in recognition. Then, just as quickly, Hymir panicked, cut the line. The serpent fell back into the deep. But Thor had known, and Jörmungandr had remembered. They were two sides of a coin that could only be spent once at the end. The turning. Now, as Fenrir howled and the sky wept ash, the waters turned black. Jörmungandr, every ripple became a wave. Every movement reshaped the ocean floor. Villages on Midgard's coast vanished beneath tides. Mountains cracked under unseen pressure. He rose, not to conquer, but because he must. The circle was broken. The serpent who had held the world together now existed only to let it go. Beneath the Black Sea, he dreamt only of the day he'd bite the world's tail and let go. Lightning licked the ocean. Thor stood on a cliff's edge, watching the waves boil. His hammer crackled. His breath was steady. He did not smile. He did not fear. He simply waited. Jörmungandr would come, and they would end each other. As it was written. As it must be. And far beneath the waves, Jörmungandr tasted the surface for the first time in eons. He felt the sky burn. And he moved. Strength is not just power, it is burden. And sometimes it is doom dressed as duty. As Midgard drowned, a figure in chains stirred in the depths of a cavern. A whisper escaped his lips, half laughter, half grief. Loki smiled. His time, too, was near. Chapter 4. Loki breaks his chains. Even tricksters grow tired of jokes. Even chaos seeks stillness. Deep beneath the stones of Midgard, beyond the gaze of sun and God, there was a place forgotten even by time. A cavern, cracked open by betrayal, sealed shut by prophecy, and in its hollow heart, bound in silence and pain, lay Loki. The binding. He had been many things. God of mischief, bringer of laughter, father to monsters, traitor, savior, liar, seer. But to the Aesir, he had become one thing, a threat. They had feared his cunning, hated his tricks, envied his freedom. And when his actions brought about the death of Baldur, the bright, the beloved, the gods chose justice. Their justice. They tore him from the skies, dragged him in chains, bound him not just in iron, but in grief. They took his son Nari and made the boy's entrails into rope. not out of necessity, but ritual. They looped the ropes around Loki's limbs, pinning him to a jagged rock. Then came the snake. Hung above his face, it dripped venom, drop by burning drop, onto his brow. It seared his skin. It scorched his mind. It made him scream, then laugh, then scream again. And that is how the world forgot him, a joke punished by fire. The wife who stayed. But one did not forget. Saijen, his wife, his anchor, the one who saw the flame behind the smoke. She knelt beside him, bowl in hand, for centuries, catching the venom before it touched him. Drop by drop by drop. When the bowl filled, she would rise to empty it. In that moment, as the venom struck his face, he would convulse, thrash, scream. His pain would echo through the roots of Yggdrasil. The world called those tremors earthquakes. They were not. They were the agony of a forgotten god. The crack. Now, as Fenrir howled and Jörmungandr uncoiled, Sigyn's hands trembled. For the first time in memory, she dropped the bowl. It shattered, and the venom fell onto skin already raw, onto a face already burned. But this time, something snapped. Not bone, not sinew. Prophecy. Loki's eyes opened, clearer than they'd ever been. He did not roar, he did not curse. He wept. Then he laughed, and it was a sound like shattering ice. The chains slipped, not because they were weak, but because they were done. And Loki stood, the unchaining. His body bore marks not even gods should wear. His spirit was frayed, his smile tired, but he stood not in fury nor madness, but in release. He looked down at Sigyn. She nodded. No words were exchanged. They had none left to say. She had given him centuries of love in silence. He had nothing but silence to return. Loki stepped from the cave, and the earth shifted. The roots of Yggdrasil groaned. The sky cracked further, and somewhere in Vigrid's plain, Odin felt his eye twitch. The trickster walks again. The pain of chaos. Loki was not smiling now. He walked past fallen trees and freezing rivers. Birds fled him. The snow around him hissed and turned to steam. He passed through realms that remembered his name and flinched. But there was no vengeance in his stride. Only weariness. He did not wish to destroy. He did not wish to win. He only wished to end the page he had been written on. To stop pretending. To stop being a villain in someone else's story. He rose not for revenge, but for release. And as he walked toward Vigrid, the field where fate would burn, the wind carried his voice. Low, cold, final. You made me the monster. Let me show you how the story ends. And in the distance, the horns began to sound. Chapter V. The Fall of Asgard. They fought not to survive, but because it was foretold they must. The field was wide, wider than the eye, wider than time, wider than mercy. Vigrid, the final battlefield, where prophecy would carve its last verses into bone and sky. The wind did not blow there. It waited. The ground drank silence. Not blood, not yet. And then they came. The gathering of fate. On one side, the Aesir and the Chosen. Odin Allfather, atop Sleipnir, his 8-legged steed, his spear Gungnir in hand. One eye closed, the other seeing more than any man should bear. Beside him, Thor, red-haired and silent, Mjolnir, trembling in his grip. Freyr, god of harvests, now armed only with hope and a stag's horn, his sword long given away. Heimdall, guardian of the Bifrost, eyes white with sight, hands clutching the horn, Jallarhorn, now silent, but not for long. Tyr, the one-handed, his sword bound tight to his arm. Frigg, the silent queen, wrapped not in armor, but grief. And behind them the Einherjar, the dead warriors of Valhalla, ghosts of courage given form. On the other side, the foretold. Fenrir, jaws wide enough to swallow stars, fur bristling with ash and moonlight. Jörmungandr, his coils winding through the edges of the earth, hissing, waiting, thunder mirrored in his blood. Loki, clad in no armor, only laughter and sorrow, his eyes gleamed not with hate, but with finality. Surtur, the fire giant, taller than mountains, with a flaming sword that hummed the melody of endings. Hel, pale as fog, half her face rotting, her army of the forgotten dead behind her. And behind them all, the quiet shadows of fate. Watching, always watching. The sun did not rise. It fled. Odin versus Fenrir. The Allfather rode forward first. No words, just the thundering of hooves and the beat of prophecy. Fenrir met him midfield, leaping with jaws like twin crescent moons. Odin threw Gungnir. The spear struck true, but prophecy cannot be speared. Fenrir caught the old god mid-leap. There was a moment, only one, when time paused. Odin's single eye met the wolf's. No anger, no fear, only acceptance. Then the jaws closed. The sky broke. Some say the world stopped breathing. Frigg's silence. Frigg did not scream. She did not curse. She simply lowered her head. The man she had loved, the father of her sons, had walked into fate. And she let him go. A queen, even now. Freyr versus Surtur. Freyr ran toward flame. No sword, only a hunting knife and a deer's antler in hand. Surtur towered over him, each footstep turning ground to lava. Freyr did not slow. He fought with the fury of spring, of bloom, of all that grows. But fire is not a season. It is a reckoning. Surtur struck once. Freyr fell not in defeat, but in offering. And the flame kept walking. Thor, Fyrstje, Jörmungandr. Thunder called thunder. Thor met Jörmungandr at the sea's edge. The serpent hissed, rising until his head blocked the storm. Mjolnir flew and struck. Poison met lightning. Fang met flesh. Storm met sea. They fought for days. Some say, others say it was mere minutes. But when it ended, Both stood wounded. Thor, pale with venom. Jörmungandr's spine cracked. Thor raised Mjolnir once more and fell. 3 steps he walked after the serpent died. And then, 2, he collapsed. Strength does not save you from prophecy, only carries you to meet it. Heimdall vs Loki. They found each other on the edge of the battlefield. Heimdall, the ever-seeing, Loki, the ever-changing. Their weapons clashed like old arguments. Blades, then fists, then laughter, then tears. They had never liked each other. They had never hated each other either. Just different ends of the same idea. Both knew how it would end. And so they struck together. To blades, to gods. 2 final breaths. The dead and the dead again. The Einherjar, the warriors of Valhalla, fought valiantly. But even the honored dead can only die so many times. Hel's army, pale and whispering, outnumbered them. Their swords were cold, their eyes hollow, their purpose complete. Valhalla emptied, Niflheim sighed, and in the center of it all, Frigg stood, alone now, surrounded by flame, by ash, by prophecy fulfilled. She looked upward. The sky wept fire. She closed her eyes and did not pray. Each god's death was a star going out. Not all at once, but enough to make the sky feel empty. The gods had fallen. The monsters lay silent. Even prophecy held its breath. And then, Surtur raised his sword. One final act remained. Chapter Vi, Surtur, and the fire that consumed Yggdrasil. Not with fury, but with finality. The fire came not to punish, but to cleanse. All had gone still. The battlefield of Vigrid was silent now. Not peaceful, not victorious, just still. The wind had fled. The gods had fallen. The stars blinked out one by one. And at the edge of everything at the farthest root of Yggdrasil stood Surtur, the first flame, the last giant, older than gods, carved from fire before fire had a name. He did not speak. He had never needed words. His sword glowed, not like metal, but like the moment just before a star explodes. It pulsed with quiet purpose, and with one step, the world changed. The flame walker. He did not run. He did not rage. He walked across fields of ash and bone, over mountains that cracked beneath his heat, through rivers that hissed into steam. Everything he touched ignited, not in chaos, but in release. There was no cruelty in it, only rhythm, like a funeral procession lit by torchlight. The world tree awaits. At the heart of all realms, the great tree stood. Yggdrasil, bark thick as time, roots that touched life, death, and everything between. Branches that had once sung with the weight of stars. It had watched the fall of empires. It had wept when Baldur died. It had listened as mortals whispered prayers into the wind. And now, it waited. It did not flinch. It did not beg. It simply breathed one last time. Surtur approached. He looked up, not with hatred, not with triumph, but with recognition, as if to ancient things were saying goodbye. Then, with hands steady, he raised his sword. The strike. The blade fell, and where it touched bark, flame spoke. Not screamed, not roared. Spoke. The roots hissed. The trunk cracked. Leaves turned to ash in perfect silence. Fire spiraled upward, not in frenzy, but like a dance long rehearsed. The flames did not devour. They remembered. Every god, every story, every whispered name carved into branches by long-dead children. They burned and became light. The fire was not angry. It was tired, and so it lit the pyre. The 9 realms lit up one by one. Asgard melted into sky. Midgard vanished beneath golden smoke. Niflheim evaporated in frost-tinged steam. Even Helheim sighed and folded in on itself. And as the last leaf fell, glowing like an ember in a winter wind, the world tree collapsed. No scream, no wail, just a sound like letting go. The pause, and then nothing. Not darkness, not cold, just absence. As if the universe exhaled and did not inhale again. Surtur, his sword now dim, stood amid the ruin. The fire receded from his body like waves from shore. His purpose fulfilled, he knelt, hands open, and turned to ash. One spark drifted from his brow and floated upward. It did not rise with speed. It did not fall. It simply waited. Not all ends are screams. Some are sighs. Some are songs sung backward. And from the ashes, in the quiet crater where Yggdrasil once stood, something stirred. But not yet. For a moment longer, the universe rested. Not the end. Not quite yet. Just the breath before rebirth. Chapter 7. The Echo After Rebirth from Ash. The end was not fire, nor ash. It was a breath. A single breath, taken in a world born anew. Silence. But not the kind that waits for battle. Not the hush before thunder. This silence was different. Stillness. After flame. After fall. After everything. The 9 realms were gone, folded into smoke. No Bifrost bridge arched between stars. No temple bells rang in Asgard. No swords clanged in Vigrid. Just the echo. And then a sound. Soft. Innocent. A bird. Its cry was not loud, but it was first. The first note in the new song of the world. Leaf and leaf-thracer. From the shadows of a forest touched by fire, protected by fate, 2 figures stepped forward. Leaf and leaf-thracer. Man and woman. Not gods, not warriors. Just humans. They had hidden during the fire, cradled in the roots of a secret grove called Hotmimir's Holt. There, while the world burned, They had whispered stories to each other, lit fires with trembling hands, listened to the old world die around them. And now they emerged. Their eyes blinked against the soft new dawn. No armies, no monsters, just trees, growing again. The air smelled clean, like rain had passed, like tears had been wept and wiped away. Leaf reached out, fingers brushing the leaves of a sapling. Yggdrasil knelt beside a brook, cupping water in her palms. She drank and cried, not out of fear, but because she could. The return of Balder. Across the ash-covered hill, a shimmer stirred, and from the fog stepped Balder, the beloved, the bright, the god who had died before all others. Killed by trickery, mourned by all things, even stones. He smiled now, not with triumph, but gentleness. His hands bore no weapons. His voice had no command. He simply spoke. You made it. Leaf and Yggdrasil bowed their heads, but Balder raised them. No thrones remain, he said, only seeds. The new tree. Beneath their feet, the earth hummed. And from the center of the scar, where Yggdrasil once rose, something green pushed through. A sapling. Thin, barely a twig, but reaching upward. Toward sun. Toward sky. Toward beginning. Balder knelt beside it. He whispered not words, but gratitude. The sapling swayed, not in wind, but in understanding. A world born quietly. The new sun rose slowly. It did not blaze. It glowed like a smile held back. Mountains blinked from slumber. Rivers hummed beneath stone. The stars rearranged themselves, uncertain but willing. And Leaf and Yggdrasil walked forward. Hand in hand. They would build no temples. They would sing no wars. They would teach their children the names of the gods. And also why they fell. They would speak of trees and cycles, and how even fire can be kind. No end is truly an end, if someone remembers what came before. The new world turned, slow, gentle, hopeful, and the roots of the sapling drank deep from the old ash. Life from death, light from ruin, balance. At last. Epilogue, the stoic silence of the gods. You are not broken for ending. You are brave for continuing after. The gods are gone now. Their thrones are dust. Their names whispered only by wind and memory. Their temples swallowed by earth and time. But their silence is not empty. It is sacred. In the Norse way of seeing, even gods had limits. Even the divine must die. There was no promise of eternal rule. No infinite victory. No denial of twilight, because twilight is part of the day. Just as endings are part of the tale. The Norns no longer weave. Their well lies still, reflecting not fate, but still water. Odin's eye rests at the bottom, watching nothing now. Thor's hammer is buried beneath new roots. Freya's tears have turned to seeds. And somewhere far from fire and frost, a raven flies alone. Not as a herald, not as a watcher, just as a bird, free, letting go. We often think power means holding on, but the gods knew something older than strength. That true power lies in release. Odin walked into the jaws of Fenrir not to win, but to honor the cycle. Thor struck Jörmungandr, not for vengeance, but to meet what was written. Loki broke his chains not to destroy, but to be done. All of them played their part. Not as heroes, not as villains, as echoes, a stoic flame. To the Norse, there was no final heaven, no permanent reward, only story. And story demands balance. Glory meets ash, pride meets fall, joy meets sorrow. And yet, they did not despair. They prepared. They accepted. They welcomed Ragnarök as they would a long winter. With fire in the hearth, with arms around family, with no illusions, but with unshakable grace. They did not curse the end. They lit a torch and walked into it. There is no shame in the end, only honor in how we meet it. So, if you, dear listener, have ended something, let go of someone, mourned a life, a love, a version of yourself, know this: you are not weaker for it. You are not broken. You are part of a story far older than God's. A story where burning leads to bloom, where falling leads to growing, where echoes become new songs, a new Yggdrasil. And maybe, somewhere unseen, a new tree is rising. Thin, young, reaching, not to replace what was lost, but to remember it. And beneath its shade, someone may sit centuries from now, telling your story. You are the echo, and echoes never die. Not the end, but the echo after.